Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make another recipe which is ideal for Christmas, and these are mini tarts, and they're actually known as Cape Breton pork pies, but that name gives a completely false impression because they've got no meat in them. They're a mini tart shell filled with dates and then with a little bit of icing on the top. Now Cape Breton is a place in Nova Scotia, and that is where this particular recipe originates from. I have seen them made in muffin tins, the cases, but I've more usually seen them very small, so I'm going to use a mini muffin tin and just make sort of bite-sized ones, but perfect for Christmas. Dates are always very popular at Christmas, especially in the UK. So to start with, I have my oven preheating at 160 Celsius, that's 140 Celsius with a fan, 325 Fahrenheit, and that's ready to bake the cases. And there are 3 steps to the recipe basically. And I do the ingredients, and I start with the 3rd step first, and for that I have a 1/4 cup of butter, which is actually 56 grams, 4 tablespoons, and then I have 1 tablespoon of maple syrup. The original recipe calls for maple extract and a little bit of milk, but I don't have maple extract, so I'm using maple syrup instead of that and the milk. And then I also have 145 grams, which is 1 cup plus 2 tablespoons of icing sugar. That's for the icing on the top. Then for the dates, I have 200 grams, which is 1 cup and 2 tablespoons of chopped dates. I have 120 millilitres, 1/2 cup of water, and I have 75 grams, which is 6 tablespoons, 3/8 of a cup of soft brown sugar. So I'm going to put those to the side as well. And then for the tart cases, I have 130 grams, which is 1 cup of plain flour. I have 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract and a pinch of salt. I have 2 tablespoons, 16 grams of icing sugar, and I have 1/2 cup, 113 grams of softened butter. And the first thing I'm going to do is to tip the flour, the icing sugar and the salt into a larger bowl, and I'm going to give those a mix around with a whisk just to get them mixed together. And then I'm going to add the butter, and I'm going to use my hands to rub that into the flour mixture until I have a sort of a texture like breadcrumbs, which when I squeeze will form into a dough. And while I'm doing that, I will also add at some stage the 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. So I just first of all coat the flour, the butter cubes in the flour, and then I'm just going to rub them between my fingers. So I've mixed that in, and I've added my little bit of vanilla as well. And then what I want to do is to take 3/4 inch balls of the dough, and put them into my cases, and I'm actually not going to worry too much. I can trim off any excess as I want to, and I'm only making a small batch of these because they're really for me they would be a Christmas thing, and it's not quite Christmas yet, but I want to do it for the blog, so I do it in advance so that other people who want to try it have time to do that. So then once you've put them into the mini muffin tin, you want to press them down around the edges to fill the tin, like that. And I can actually take a little bit more flour to make that easier for myself, but just like that. So you can take a finger with some flour on it and just press in to the dough to form it around the edge, and you can take off any excess afterwards. So I'm just going to take off a bit of that excess there. And just shape that like that. And then I'm just going to trim that excess off. And so that's my first batch, and I'm going to put those into the oven, and I'm going to bake them for 16 minutes, and I'll bake the other ones as well, the remaining dough, for 16 minutes, and then I'm going to let them cool down, and as they're cooling down we'll go on and we'll make our date filling and our icing. So the tart cases for our Cape Breton pork pies have baked, and I actually did some slightly larger ones in some little tart cups, and I've put them on a wire rack still in the tins. I'm going to let them cool down completely. Now I should say that as they bake, the bottoms are likely to rise up. You can try to prevent that by docking them with a fork before you start, and you can also just take something round and flatten them down again, and they'll be fine. So this is actually what they look like, and they're still hot, so I better pick them up with something that's not going to burn me. So they're firming up now because they'll be soft when they come out of the oven. Once they're firm, I will tip them out onto the wire rack and let them cool completely. And so we'll go on to the next stage, which is to make our fig mixture. So I'm going to put the figs into a saucepan with the half a cup of water and the sugar, and I actually put my vanilla into the pastry dough, and I should have put it in here later, so I've got another half a teaspoon of vanilla for later. So we're going to heat this up on the stove, so I'll show you that when I've set that up. So I'm going to heat the figs up, and I'm going to let them boil for about 10 minutes once it's up to temperature, and I'm going to keep stirring and then mash them with a fork to break them up if they don't break up completely while they're boiling. So this is boiling now, and I'm just going to keep stirring it as it boils for 10 minutes. So that is been boiling for 10 minutes, and I have mashed them a little bit with a fork and they look quite good. So I'm going to put those into a bowl and allow them to cool down before we go on to the next step. The date mixture has almost cooled down, so now what I'm going to do is to make the icing that goes on the top. And so for that I have my icing sugar, butter and maple syrup, and I'm going to put them all into the same bowl, and I'm just going to mix them together until they form just an icing, which you could pipe, but I'm going to spoon onto the mixture. So I'm just going to mix this in. Now I did add a teaspoon of milk just to loosen it up a little bit, but it's worked quite well. So that's all I need for that. So what I've done now is I've just put some of them, the cases, onto a plate, and I'm going to take some of the mixture I'm going to spoon the mixture into the cases, and then I'm going to take some of the icing and just spoon some on the top. And with those like that, I have a few more to do as well, and I have more date mixture than I need, and I have a little more icing than I need, but that's fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a taste of one. I'll have one of these small ones. That is very nice. The tart case is very delicate and it melts in the mouth, so you have to be careful when you take them out of the tin, but that melts in the mouth. Then that rich sticky date feeling and taste comes through, and then the sweetness of the icing as well. So these are, as I say, they're known as Cape Breton pork pies, and they usually eat them at Christmas. So I hope you've enjoyed this recipe, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below the video and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, which will take you to this recipe, and I'll put a link for it below the video as well. And then I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.